जय जय राम ओम श्री राम जय राम 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 जय जय राम ओम श्री राम जय जय राम। प्रणाम प्रणाम प्रणाम। नमस्कार नमस्कार। हरि ओम। Yesterday we were referring to some portions from Passage to Divinity, which accounts for the early life of Papa Asbital Rao. So today again he prompted us to go through the same. We are skipping many portions and coming to the portion where, he makes a mention about Yoga Vasishta. But slowly and imperceptibly, the external circumstances were helping Vittal Rao's religious inclination to become deeper and the spirit of dispassion to gain an added strength and impetus. Every evening he spent an hour at the house of Sitaram Rao, whose children would be engaged in bhajan before the image of Sri Krishna. During the bhajan, Vittal Rao would lose himself in a blissful state of self-forgetfulness. He now commenced reading afresh the lofty teachings of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the works of Swami Vivekananda, Swami Ramtirtha, as well as other religious books like the Yoga Vasishta, with an intense interest. These works seemed now to unveil to him a deeper meaning and significance than they ever did before, and had the effect of accelerating the speed of the spiritual evolution that was subtly taking place within him. Yesterday we were reading, the 15th sloka in the 8th chapter, where the Lord says, the world is dukkhalayam and ashashvatam. Papa used to read intensely Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So by reading this particular stanza, nobody should get the view that we should be pessimist. It is not like that. We have not so far understood the world. Ever since our childhood, we have been developing various concepts, how our life should be, how we should be able to tackle, what is the goal to be scaled. Every time we keep on doing this. By looking at others, by knowing about others. So we have always this, concept building exercise unknowingly. In that process, we never used to accept the reality of the world as such. That is why we develop grumbling and complaints, because things are not shaping or going along with what we conceive, what we intend, what we expect. That is why we end up with miseries, according to Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita, through that sloka, says, it is not the question of pessimism or optimism, it is something by which we are trying to understand the world as such. So that we will not grumble or complain. The nature of the world is accepted by us. And the world offers an opportunity for us to move out of the world. While within the world, it helps us to move out of the world. Geographically, physically, we may be inside the world, but spiritually, we go out of the world and look at the world. This is exactly what was working in Papa's mind. That is why he said the world as world is unreal, but the world as God. That means it's a God's own projection. It is real. The same word we read in Yoga Vasishta. We will come to that later. So, these works seemed now to unveil to him a deeper meaning and significance than they ever did before, and had the effect of accelerating the speed of the spiritual evolution that was subtly taking place within him. So Papa started going to early morning. He would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, Vittal Rao, and run to Kadri Hill. There in one of the tanks he would have his bath, and after bath he would go to an elevated rock, sit down for meditation till about 7. Later he gave up even his midday meal. He now subsisted entirely on boiled potatoes and fruits, and these too he would eat only when he felt hungry. He had before this given up the use of these dentures. He bathed in cold water drawn out of the well by himself, washed his own clothes. A bare mat sufficed for lying down, but he kept himself awake the whole night in repetition of the mantram. So then his brother, Sanjeeva Rao, he happened to come there, and these are all his remarks. I used to visit Canada once every 2 or 3 years. During my visits, I would stay for a few days with my brothers. During my stay with brother Sitaram Rao in Mangalore, I was told that brother Vittal Rao, who had been managing a weaving establishment in Mangalore for another gentleman, had developed an intense disgust for the world. I went and saw him. I found him wearing the coarse khadar, and the bench he was sitting on at the time of my visit was strewn with religious books, amongst which I remember having seen the works of Swami Ramtirtha. My talks with him told me that he was not going to remain long in Mangalore, and that because he was under an obligation to his partner, he had to continue there for some more time. What exactly he intended to do after fulfilling his part of the obligation, he did not inform me. A couple of days after my visit to him, he happened to come one night to Sitaram Rao's house along with Dr. Umanath Rao. Mahatma Gandhi became the topic of conversation. There was some discussion about the impracticability of the passive resistance satyagraha as preached by the Mahatma. In the course of the conversation, yesterday we repeated these words. In the course of the conversation, Vittal Rao remarked, "These fetters are galling. Why not I snap them?" At once my other brother met his remark vehemently with an exposition of the duties of a householder as he understood them, and how it would be cowardice to shirk them, etc. This did not at all convince Vittal Rao. Soon after this discussion, Dr. Umanath Rao and himself left. That night, reviewing the conversation, it struck me that Vittal Rao was in dead earnest when he declared his intention of snapping the bonds. After my return to Ernakulam, I had news from time to time of how, like a sannyasin, Vittal Rao was living, first reducing the meals from 2 to 1, and later giving up that also and living on boiled potatoes. Naturally, this self-delaying on his part brought great anxiety to his relations, for he was adamant in spite of protests and persuasions from all quarters. At this juncture, I had a letter from father in which he asked me to write to Vittal Rao and persuade him to break his fast and take 2 meals. I wrote urging that due to dear father's old age, he should not go on with the fast. My letter brought a prompt but brief reply. It said that since he began the fast, He felt anything better than before, and he was trying it as an experiment. The letter ended with the statement that he had realized the hollowness of life. I did not pursue the matter as I knew it was useless. Hollowness of life. So yesterday's sloka gave us some idea. Now he was making a mention about Yoga Vasishta. A few portions we will try to go through. Many of you might be knowing the background. He wanted to go on a pilgrimage, so all brothers, everybody, joyously they went for a pilgrimage throughout the length and breadth of India, and then they came back. And after he came back, suddenly he withdrew to himself. Desirous of touring the whole country and visiting the holy places of pilgrimage, Rama sought the presence of his father and asked to be permitted to undertake such a pilgrimage. The king chose an auspicious day for the commencement of this pilgrimage, and on that day, after receiving the affectionate blessings of the elders of the family, Rama departed. Rama, along with his brothers, toured the whole country from the Himalayas downwards. He then returned to the capital to the delight of the people of the country. Upon entering the palace, Rama devoutly bowed to his father. Vasishta and others. The whole of the city of the Ayodhya put on a festive appearance for 8 days. For some time, Rama lived in the palace, duly performing his daily duties. However, very soon, a profound change came over him. He grew thin, emaciated, and pale and weak. The king Dasharatha was worried over the sudden and unaccountable change in his beloved son's appearance and behavior. Whenever he questioned Rama concerning his health, the latter replied that there was nothing wrong. When Dasharatha asked Rama, "Beloved son, what is worrying you?" Nothing further, and remained silent. Inevitably, Dasharatha turned to sage Vasishta for an answer. The sage enigmatically answered, "Surely there is some reason why Rama behaves in this manner. Even as in this world, no great change can take place before the coming into being of their cause. Changes like anger, despondency, and joy do not manifest in the behavior of noble ones without proper cause." Dasharatha did not wish to probe further. Soon after this, the sage Vishwamitra arrived at the place. When the king was informed, he rushed forward to greet him. Then, Vishwamitra asked for Rama's help in freeing himself from the attacks of Khara and Dushana. So hearing this, Dasharatha was upset. So sage Rama is not even 16 years old and therefore not qualified, and he's so many excuses. And then Vishwamitra was angry. Seeing thus, the sage Vasishta intervened and persuaded the king not to go back on his promise, but to send Rama with Vishwamitra. In obedience to the wishes of the preceptor Vasishta, the king Dasharatha ordered an attendant to fetch Rama. On his return, he announced that Rama would follow and added, "The prince seems to be dejected. He shuns company." Bewildered by this, Dasharatha turned to Rama's chamberlain and asked for the facts concerning Rama's state of mind and health. The Chamberlain was visibly distressed. He said, Lord, since his return from the pilgrimage, a great change has come over the prince. He does not seem to be interested, even in bathing and in the worship of the deity. He does not enjoy the company of the people in the inner apartments, nor is he interested in jewels and precious stones. Even when offered charming and pleasing objects, he looks at them with sad eyes, uninterested. He spurns the palace dancers, regarding them as tormentors. He goes through the motion of eating, walking, resting, bathing, sitting, like an automaton, or one who is deaf and dumb. Often he mutters to himself, what is the use of wealth and prosperity, of adversity or of house? All this is unreal. He is silent most of the time and is not amused by entertainment. He relishes only solitude. He is all the time immersed in his own thought. We do not know what has come over our prince, what he contemplates in his mind, or what he is after. Day by day, he gets more and more emaciated. Again and again, he thinks to himself, alas, we are dissipating our life in various ways. Instead of striving to reach the Supreme, people wail aloud that they are suffering and that they are destitute, but no one sincerely turns away from the sources of their suffering and destitution. Every word is precious, People wail around. Rama says that they are suffering, they are destitute, but no one sincerely turns away from the sources of their suffering and destitution. Seeing all this and hearing all this, we, his humble servants, are extremely distressed. We do not know what to do. He is bereft of hope. He is bereft of desire. He is attached to nothing. He depends on nothing. He is not deluded nor demented, and he is not enlightened. At times, however, it looks as if he is overwhelmed by suicidal thoughts, spurred on by the feelings of despondency. What is the use of wealth or of mothers and relations? What is the use of the kingdom? What is the use of ambition in this world? Lord, only you can find the appropriate remedy for this condition of the prince. Vishwamitra said, if that be the case, may Rama be requested to come here. His condition is not the result of delusion, but it is full of wisdom and dispassion, and it points to enlightenment. Bring him here, we shall dispel him despondency. Valmiki, this is narrated by Valmiki, Valmiki was asked by Brahma to continue the Ramayana for the sake of those who would like to get themselves relieved fully from the bondage. So it was started by Valmiki. So Valmiki said, thereupon the king urged the chamberlain to invite Rama to the court. In the meantime, Rama himself got ready to meet his father. Even from a distance he saw and saluted his father and sages, and they saw that though young, his face shone with the peace of maturity. He bowed to the feet of the king, who embraced him, lifted him up, said to him, what makes you so sad, my son? Dejection is an open invitation to a host of miseries. Rama said, Holy Sir, I shall duly answer your question. I grew up happily in my father's abode. I was instructed by worthy teachers. Recently I went on a pilgrimage. During this period, a trend of thought that has taken hold of me, robbing me of all hope in the world. My heart begins to question, what do people call happiness? And can it be had in the ever-changing objects of this world? Ashashwatam. All beings in the world take birth but to die, and they die to be born. I do not perceive any meaning in all these transient phenomena which are the roots of suffering and sin. Papa's words, the fetters are galling, Unrelated beings come together and the mind conjures up a relationship between them. Everything in this world is dependent upon the mind, upon one's mental attitude. On examination, the mind itself appears to be unreal, but we are bewitched by it. We seem to be running after a mirage in the desert to slake our thirst. So, sir, surely we are not bond slaves, sold to a master. Yet we live a life of slavery without any freedom whatsoever. Ignorant of the truth, we have been aimlessly wandering in this dense forest called the world. What is this world? What comes into being? What comes into growth? Into being grows and dies. How does this suffering come to an end? My heart bleeds with sorrow, though I do not shed tears in deference to the feelings of my friends. We are not bond slaves sold to a master, yet we live a life of slavery without any freedom whatsoever. Ignorant of the truth, we have been aimlessly wandering in this dense forest called the world. What is this world? What comes into being, grows, dies? How does this suffering come to an end? My heart bleeds with sorrow, though I do not shed tears. Rama continues, equally useless, O sage, is wealth which deludes the ignorant, unsteady and fleeting. This wealth gives birth to numerous worries and generates an insatiable craving for more. Wealth is no respecter of persons. Both the good and the wicked can become wealthy. However, people are good, compassionate and friendly only till their hearts are hardened by the passionate pursuit of wealth. Wealth taints the heart even of a wise scholar, a hero, a man of gratitude, a dexterous and a soft-spoken person. Wealth and happiness do not dwell together. Suddenly we remember when Sri Gopinathan Nair was the president of Sevagram ashram for 16 or 17 years, Gandhiji's. When he came here in a Satsang period, we requested him to share some thoughts. He said when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, he once happened to visit Sevagram, and seeing the pitiable condition, he sumoto sanctioned 10 lakhs. 10 crores, sorry, 10 crores. Something, 5 crores or 10 crores, we don't know. 5 crores. So when the check came, the then president, because the rule is, not to accept money from anybody. As far as we remember, it still continues. There are some lands, inmates have to work there and then cultivate and produce the agricultural produce for their sustenance, simple life. So what to do now? It has come. So he immediately called for a meeting of old Gandhians, in which Gopinathan Nair also attended. And then the matter was placed. Lot of deliberations took place. Just like you remember, Papa was tempted by that merchant, that if you win the derby, you can use it for feeding sadhus, helping sadhus, like that. So many such thoughts came in the minds of so many people. But finally, somebody was able to remember the words of Vinobaji, who set up the Sevagram ashram at the instance of Gandhiji. And the conditions, stipulations were this, that they will not accept money. Why, not that money is bad. But when you accept money, you must naturally have a bank account. You must naturally have an account, because it's a public money. So naturally there should be an accountant, there should be a cashier, and then it should be audited. Then it should be placed before the statutory authorities. And when you handle it, you become possessive of it. Unknowingly, you have to become possessive. It is somebody's money. And you will distrust people unknowingly, not with the idea of distrusting, but slowly it creeps in. You have to always check out whether the key is there. So for a spiritual aspirant, this will retard his progress. And who will handle after the present people? Then it has to be stipulated. So many things, So finally they decided to return the 5 crore check back to the government. So wealth, here Rama says, wealth unsteady and fleeting. This wealth gives birth to numerous worries, generates insatiable. That's all. Today somebody offers 5 crores. We put it in a bank account, the interest comes. Then we find the interest is coming low. Again, if it is 6 crores, if it is 10 crores, like that, the corpus gets on, multiplied. So your tendency is not to spend, but to hoard. Unknowingly and under the banner of selfless activity. That is why Papa was very clear. No such deposit should be made in the bank. So, wealth is no respecter of persons. Both the good and the wicked can become wealthy. However, people are good, compassionate and friendly only till their hearts are hardened by the passionate pursuit of wealth. Wealth taints the heart even of a wise scholar, a hero, a man of gratitude, a dexterous and a soft-spoken person. That's why we are remembered. Wealth and happiness do not dwell together. Rare is that wealthy man who does not have rivals and enemies who scandalize him. To the lotus of right action, wealth is the night. To the white lotus of sorrow, it is the moonlight. To the lamp of clear insight, it is the wind. To the wave of enmity, it is the flood. To the cloud of confusion, it is the favorable wind. To the poison of despondency, it is the aggravating agent. It is like the serpent of evil thoughts, and it adds fear to one's own distress. It is destructive snowfall to the creeper of dispassion. It is the nightfall to the owl of evil desires. It is the eclipse of the moon of wisdom. In its presence, a person's good nature shrivels. Indeed, wealth seeks him who has already been chosen by death. These are all the thoughts that were welling up in the minds of Rama. Even so is his lifespan, O sage. Its duration is like that of water droplet on a leaf. It is fruitful only to those who have self-knowledge. We may encompass the wind. We may break up space. We may string waves into a garland. But we cannot pin our faith in the lifespan. Man vainly seeks to extend his lifespan. And thereby he earns more sorrow and extends the period of suffering. Only he lives who strives to gain self-knowledge, which alone is worth gaining in this world, thereby putting an end to future births. Others exist here like donkeys. To the unwise, knowledge of scriptures is a burden. To the one who is full of desires, even wisdom is a burden. To one who is restless, his own mind is a burden. And to the one who has no self-knowledge, the body is a burden. The rat of time gnaws at the lifespan without respite. The termite of disease eats the very vitals of this living being. Just as a cat intent on catching a rat looks at it with great alertness and readiness, death is ever keeping a watch over this lifespan. Rama continued, I am bewildered and scared when I contemplate the coming into being of this dreadful enemy of wisdom known as egotism. It comes into being in the darkness of ignorance, flourishes in ignorance. It generates endless sinful tendencies, sinful actions. All suffering surely revolves around egotism. It is the I who suffers. And the egotism is the sole cause of mental distress. I feel that egotism is my worst disease, spreading the net of worldly objects of pleasure. It is this egotism that traps the living beings. Indeed, all the terrible calamities in this world are born of egotism. Egotism eclipses self-control, destroys virtue, dissipates equanimity. Giving up this egotist notion, I am Rama, giving up all desire, I wish to rest in the self. I realize that whatever I have done with an egotistic notion is vain. Non-egotism alone is truth. When I am under the influence of egotism, I am unhappy. When I am free from egotism, I am happy. Egotism promotes cravings. Without it, they perish. It is this egotism alone, without rhyme or reason, that has spread the net of family and social relationship to catch me unwary soul. I think I am free from egotism, yet I am miserable. Pray enlighten me. Bereft of the grace earned through the service of the holy ones, the impure mind stuff remains restless as the wind. It is dissatisfied with whatever it gets, grows more and more restless by the day. The sieve can never be filled with water, nor can the mind ever reach the state of fulfillment, however much of worldly objects one acquires. As we read, we can go back to our own life, so that it is not that we are trying to understand Yoga Vasishta or Rama's comments. We are seeing our own life, in this perspective, how true they are. In hell, the mind seeks pleasure here, but even that it does not get. Like the lion in a cage, the mind is ever restless, having lost its freedom, yet not happy with its present state. Also, I am bound by the knots of craving to the net that has been spread out by the mind. Even as the rushing waters of a river uproot the trees on its bank, the restless mind has uprooted my whole being. I am being wafted by the mind like a dry leaf in the wind. These were the words expressed by Pujya Swamiji when he came as Anandashram to Papa. He told us, I am a dry leaf, tossed hither and thither. Don't push me to the samsarik. I am being wafted by the mind like a dry leaf in the wind. It does not let me rest anywhere. It is the mind alone which is the cause of all objects in the world. The three worlds exist because of the mind stuff. When the mind vanishes, the world vanishes too. You should try hard to find treatment. Rama continued, it is really when the mind stuff is enveloped by craving that innumerable errors arise in the darkness of ignorance, thus caused. This craving dries up the good and noble qualities of the mind and heart, like sweetness and gentleness of disposition, and makes me hard and cruel. In that darkness, craving in its different forms dances like a goblin. One day a mother came here. You must have shared this, but worth repeating to the newcomers. A mother who is working hard to make both ends meet, a daily wage earner in the BD industry. She came and cried. He has only son, and who was studying in 7th or 8th standard. His activities are very, very deplorable. He abuses the mother. He is always restless. He never expresses a word of love. The mother says, I am working only for him, but he is behaving like this. We told the mother, will you call him to call on us? Yes. Will he come? For ashram he will come. So she went, and after 2 days the son came. Good boy. So we closed the door and asked him, in which class are you studying? Who are all at home? Then he said, he has only mother. Mother works? Yes, she works. What is her earning? 60 rupees or 70 rupees per week. Less than 100 rupees a week. And you know who? She works for whom? She works for me. Then why are you so rude to her? You know what he said? There is no lavatory. Early morning, I have to run before the sun, with the dawn is there, to run to nearby place, to ease myself and come back. All my classmates have their own attached bathrooms, attached lavatories. I don't have any. Then why should you? What is the connection between that and your rudeness? He said, to whom else I can show this? Only mother will patiently bear all this. I said, you should have told this to her. She cannot help. Because we are in a place where it is full of rock. We can't have a lavatory there. Water is also not there. We have to get water from a different place. You see, and the boy was not telling in a desperate way. So we said, what is the way out? Ashram is prepared to put up a lavatory anywhere nearby. It can't be done, he said. Then we have to shift the whole thing. That is not possible now. Acha, now how will we solve this problem? He said, if I can get a cycle, I will go very early in the morning and finish all this. Will that be all right? Yes. Suddenly somebody heard this. He came out of the room. Yeah, correct. And then the boy, he was very impressive. So somebody was coming from Ramdas Prasad upstairs. He looked at the boy. He said, what do you want? He immediately, because of his innocence, said, I need a second-hand cycle. I will buy new one and give it to you. Immediately the boy ran back and told, this man has promised to give me a cycle. So your problem is solved? No rudeness? Why we remembered, behind the rude behavior, there she is the background. There must be a reason behind it that we must be able to try and dig out. So here he says, it is really when the mind stuff is enveloped by craving that innumerable errors arise in the darkness of ignorance thus caused. This craving dries up the good and noble qualities of the mind and the heart. Dries up the good and noble qualities of the mind and heart. That is the sweetness and gentleness of disposition, and makes me hard and cruel. In that darkness, craving in its different forms dances like a goblin. Though I adopt various methods to restrain this craving, it overpowers me in a moment and carries me astray, even as a gale carries a straw away. Craving cuts away any hope I entertain of developing dispassion, and even as a rat snaps the thread, I helplessly revolve caught in the wheel of craving. We have to look back to our own life. Like birds caught in a net, we are unable, though we have the wings for it, to fly to our goal or abode of self-knowledge. This craving can never be appeased. Even if I were to quaff nectar, the characteristic of this craving is that it has no direction. It drives me in one direction now. The very next moment it takes me away in another direction. Like a mad horse, it spreads in front of us a very wide net of son, friend, wife, and other relatives. Though I am a hero, this craving makes me a frightened coward. Though I have eyes to see, it makes me blind. Though I am full of joy, it makes me miserable. It is like a dreadful goblin. It is this dreadful goblin craving that is responsible for bondage and misfortune. It breaks the heart of man, creates delusions in him. Caught by this goblin, man is unable to enjoy even the pleasures that are within his reach. Though it appears as if the craving is for happiness, this craving leads neither to happiness nor to fruitfulness in his life. On the contrary, it involves vain effort and leads to every kind of inauspiciousness. Even when it occupies the stage called life, on which several happy and unhappy situations play, this craving, like an aged actress, is incapable of performing anything good and noble, and suffers defeat and discomfiture at every turn. Yet it does not give up dancing on the stage. Craving now ascends to the skies, now dives deep into the depths of the netherworld. It is ever restless, for it is based on the emptiness of the mind. In the mind, the light of wisdom momentarily shines, but there is delusion the next moment. It is a wonder that sages are able to cut this with the sword of self-knowledge. Rama still continues. This pitiable body, composed of veins, arteries, nerves, is also a source of pain. Yesterday we read, Inert, it appears to be intelligent. One does not know if it is sentient or insentient, and it engenders only delusion. Delighted with a little gratification and distressed by the least adversity, this body is indeed highly despicable. I can only compare a tree to the body, with branches for arms, trunk for the torso, holes for the eyes, fruits for head, and leaves for numerous illness. It is a resting place for living beings. Who can say that it is one's own? Hope or despair in relation to its futile. It is but a boat given to one for crossing the ocean of birth and death, but one should not regard it as oneself. This tree, which is the body, is born in the forest known as samsara. The restless monkey mind plays on it. It is the abode of crickets, worries. It is constantly eaten by the insects of endless suffering. It shelters the venomous serpent of craving, and the wild crow of anger dwells on it. On it are the flowers of laughter. Its fruits are good and evil. It appears to be animated by the wind of life force. It supports the birds of senses. It is resorted to by the traveler, lust or desire, for it provides the shade of pleasure. The formidable vulture, egotism, is seated on it, and it is hollow, empty. It is certainly not meant to promote happiness. Whether it lives for long or falls in a short time, it is still useless. It is composed of flesh and blood. It is subject to old age and death. I am not enamored of it. It is completely filled with impure substances, afflicted with ignorance. How can it fulfill my hopes? This body is the home of illness, the field of mental distress, changing emotions, mental states. I am not enamored of it. What is wealth? What is kingdom? What is the body? All these are mercilessly cut down by the time death. At death, this ungrateful body abandons the soul that dwelt in it and protected it. What hope shall I repose it? Shamelessly it indulges again and again in the same actions. Its only certain purpose seems to be to burn in the end. Unmindful of old age and death that are common to the rich and the poor, it seeks wealth and power. Shame, shame upon those who are bound to this body, deluded by the wine of ignorance. Shame on those who are bound to this world. Rama still continues. Even the part of life which people ignorantly regard as enjoyable, say childhood, is full of sorrow. O sage, helplessness, mishaps, cravings, inability to express oneself, utter foolishness, playfulness, instability, weakness, all these characterize childhood. The child is easily offended, easily roused to anger, easily burst into tears. The fact, one may say boldly, that the child's anguish is more terrible than that of a dying man, an aged man, a sick man, or any other adult. For in childhood, one's state is comparable truly to that of an animal living at the mercy of others. The child is exposed to the countless happenings around. They puzzle and confuse the child, arouse in it various fantasies and fears. The child is impressionable and is easily influenced by the wicked. In consequence, the child is subjected to control and punishment by its parents. Childhood seems to be a period of nothing but subjection. Though the child may appear to be innocent, the truth is that all sorts of defects, sinful tendencies, and neurotic behavior lie hidden and dormant in it, even as an owl lies hidden in a dark hole during the daytime. O sage, I pity those people who foolishly imagine that childhood is a happy period. What can be worse suffering than a restless mind? And the child's mind is extremely restless. Unless the child gets something new every day, it is unhappy. Crying and weeping seem to be the child's foremost activity. When the child does not get what it wants, it looks as if its heart is broken. When the child goes to school, it receives punishment in the hands of its teachers, and all this adds to its unhappiness. When the child cries, its parents, in order to pacify it, promise to give it the world. And from then on, the child begins to value the world, to desire the worldly objects. The parents say, I shall give you the moon for a toy. And the child, believing their words, thinks that it can hold the moon in its hand. Thus are the seeds of delusion sown in the little heart. Though the child feels heat and cold, it is unable to avoid it. How is it better than a tree? Then, like the animals and birds, the child vainly reaches out to get what it wants, and it is fearful of every elder in the house. Leaving this period of childhood behind, the human being goes on to the stage of youth, but he is unable to leave the unhappiness behind. There he is subjected to numerous mental modifications, and he progresses from misery to greater misery, for he abandons wisdom and embraces the terrible goblin known as lust that resides in his heart. His life is full of desire and anxiety. They who have not been robbed of their wisdom in their youth can withstand any onslaught. I am not enamored of this transient youth in which short-lived pleasure is quickly followed by long-lasting suffering, and deluded by which man regards the changing to be the changeless. Man regards the changing to be changeless. What is worse, it is during youth that one indulges in such actions that brings unhappiness to many others. Even as a tree is consumed by a forest fire, the youth's heart is consumed by the fire of lust when his beloved leaves him. However much he may strive to develop purity of heart, the youth's heart is strained with impurity. Even when his beloved is not present near him, he is distracted by the thoughts of her beauty. Such a person who is full of craving is naturally not held in high esteem by good men. Youth is the abode of diseases and mental distress. It can be compared to a bird whose wings are good and evil acts. Youth is like a sandstorm that disperses and dissipates one's good qualities. Youth arouses all sorts of evil in his heart, suppresses the good qualities that may exist there. It is thus the promoter of evil. It gives rise to delusion and attachment. Though youthfulness appears to be very desirable to the body, it is destructive to the mind. In youth, one is tempted by the mirage of happiness, and in its pursuit, he falls into the well of sorrow. Hence, I am not enamored by the youth. Alas, even when youth is about to leave the body, the passion that had been aroused by youth burn thee more fiercely and bring about one's quick destruction. He who delights in this youth is surely not a man, but an animal in human garb. They are adorable, they are great souls, and they alone are men who are not overcome by the evils of youth, who survive the stages of life without succumbing to temptations. For it is easy to cross a great ocean, but to reach the other shore of youth without being overcome by its likes and dislikes is indeed difficult. Still, Rama doesn't stop. We can now understand, when Papa went through that and when he was trying to integrate with the then life. That is why he said the fetters are galling. That is why he said, when am I going to snap the bonds? No, this is every now and then we are bringing.
What happened to that boy? Did he become all right after getting there?
In his youth, man is a slave of sexual attraction. In the body, which is no more than the aggregate of flesh, blood, bone, air, skin, he perceives beauty and charm. Even if this beauty is permanent, there is some justification in the imagination, but alas, it does not last very long. On the contrary, very soon the very flesh that contributed to the attractiveness, charm and beauty of the beloved is transformed first into a shriveled ugliness of old age and later consumed by fire or by worms or by vultures. Yet, while it lasts, this sexual attraction consumes the heart and the wisdom of the man. By this is the creation maintained. When this attraction ceases, this samsara also ceases. When the child is dissatisfied with its childhood, youth takes over. When youth is plagued by dissatisfaction, frustration, old age overpowers. How cruel is life! Even as wind tosses a dewdrop from a leaf, old age destroys the body. Even as a drop of poison, when it enters the system, soon pervades it. Senility soon pervades the entire body and breaks it down, makes it the laughingstock of other people. Though the old man is unable to satisfy his desire physically, the desire themselves flourish and grow. He begins to ask himself, who am I? What should I do? When it is too late for him to change his life's course, after his lifestyle or make his life more meaningful, with the onset of senility, all the distressing symptoms of physical breakdown like cough, white hairs, hard breathing, dyspepsia, emaciation manifest themselves. Perhaps the deity presiding over death sees the white-roofed head of the old man as salted melon rushes to take it. Senility vigorously cuts the root of life like a flood that cuts away the roots of trees standing on the river bank. Death follows, carries it away. Senility is like the royal attendant that precedes the king death. How mysterious, how astounding. They who have not been overcome by enemies and who have taken their abode in inaccessible mountain peaks, even they have been afflicted by the demoness known as senility and degeneracy. All enjoyments in the world are deluded, like the lunatic's enjoyment of the taste of fruits. I don't think I will be able to complete because this runs for another 3-4 pages. Anyway, it is not to picture, a sorry portrayal of life. But yesterday we read, Swami Ranganaji Maharaj said, to know that what is the nature of life, nature of the samsaric life. So we people have to know all these things. And then Valmiki took pains to explain everything through Ramadis, and then Vasishtha starts. That is why it's called a classic, Yoga Vasishtha. For a person who wants to get out of the bondage. Otherwise it is boring. But a person, a serious spiritual aspirant, so that is why we remembered. So God was setting everything in Papa's mind. And to give a great push, he made him to read books like this. Not merely read, to assimilate. An in-depth study. Otherwise that words will not come. He said, the fetters are galling. When am I going to snap the bonds? He had realized the hollowness of life. Snapping the bonds.
Body and conditions, very nice thing, sir. Body and conditions, very nice.
Yeah, very nice to hear. No doubt. But it's a portrayal of our own life, no?
Yes, sure.
Through Rama, Valmiki is now portraying. It's a word picture of our own inner content. A word picture of our own inner content. It makes us to think deeply. And the inquest of God is the instrumental cause for all of us to get more and more clarity on the goal to be scaled and the need to make firm resolves. And whatever is to be followed, that has to be followed. Otherwise, we will not reach anywhere. So, if possible, we will try to complete the other portion also tomorrow. Hope it is not boring to everybody,
No, it is very interesting.
Good.
Bitter truth.
Yeah, down to earth, bitterest, not even bitterest truth, if there is a word.
Unpleasant and bitter to hear, but the truth is truth.
Exactly, you are absolutely right.
The fault in the glue, to be honest, Swamiji.
Yeah.
Today.
So tomorrow we will continue with the 3 more pages and a few words of Vasishtha, portraying the other side. Accepting the world as they are, how do we adapt and how do we make the best use of it to cross over the ocean of samsara? Yoga Vasishtha does not paint only the negative. That is there in the first few pages, but later on, through the words of Vasishtha, Valmiki brings out the whole thing. Then only we become aware of the true picture of Ramayana. Otherwise, we have heard about Ramayana, no? We also always tell that he is the Maryada Purushottam. But we don't think we have clear-cut ideas. We have some superficial ideas based upon what has been heard, what has been understood by us. But at the same time, what is the inner content? And what was the background? All these things are beautifully brought out in Yoga Vasishtha. And Papa was prompted to go through this Yoga Vasishtha. That prepared the necessary ground for him for that great plunge on the 27th December 1922. Hari Om. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om.